we start to learn to leverage our thinking not to get specific circumstances or outcomes that are tangible, but we leverage them to get certain feelings, emotional states that supersede or go above this whole idea of specific outcomes.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question: what has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best, and your co-host on the Profit by Design podcast. Weekly, my co-host, Mike Bruno, and I bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests, who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real-life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire. Profit designers, it's 2020. Are you creating your highly profitable, great place to work? Will you be in a place to take a 4-week vacation in the next year? Find out. Take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment. Hey, profit designers. Is there an area in your business or your life where you feel stuck or frustrated, or you're just not happy with the results you're getting? If so, I think you're going to be really intrigued by our guest today and the topic that we get into. We have Ades joining us. Kim is a good friend of mine and longstanding colleague. She's the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching and JournalEngine software. She's an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, a coach, and a mom of 5. And she has 15 years of experience coaching many of North America's most respected leaders. She is recognized as an expert in the area of thought mastery. And she uses her own unique philosophy and quirky coaching style to help her clients deal with core issues and shift their thinking in order to yield extraordinary results. So with that, let's join my interview with Kim. Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm always excited to talk to you.
Well, it is great to reconnect. You had me on your podcast a couple of months back now, and I was really excited to get to bring you on here and introduce you to our profit designers. You and I go way back, and we share a common interest around developing emotional intelligence in leaders. And I know in the work that I do with small business owners, the ability to master our thinking is critical. And you are an expert in thought mastery. So maybe break that down for us. What do you do with that? What does that mean?
I mean, before we get into what do we do with it, what does it mean? What is thought mastery? And it's the idea that the way we think really is the seed, holds all the power in determining our outcomes and our results. So when we look at what we've experienced in the world, when we look at what we've achieved, when we look at our relationships, when we look at our health, those are all results. That's what we can call them. Those are all the outcomes. But before the outcomes happen, they all started with a thought. It could be, well, I have a thought that I'd like to get married someday or be in a relationship. It could be a thought that, hey, I want to get healthier, so I'm going to buy a standing desk. It could be, I have a thought that I want to grow my business. But we all start every outcome with a thought. And the thoughts that we have, both positively and negatively, will impact our performance and therefore our outcomes. So a lot of times people want to improve their results by simply changing their behaviors or the actions they take. And I always want to slow people down and say, before you do that, yes, action is necessary. But before you do that, let's look at how you're thinking about some of this stuff. How you're thinking about the obstacles that might come your way, how you're thinking about your readiness, how you're thinking about yourself, your skills, your talents, your abilities. And let's see if they're really lined up with the outcomes that you're wanting. And if not, let's make some adjustments. So thought mastery is this whole idea of lining up your thinking with the outcomes you're seeking.
Boy, that's like 2 minutes of a deep explanation, but that is so powerful. And I really want our profit designers to grasp the impact of that. And I think maybe something that I can share is my firsthand experience with that, because all my life, I've been on a quest to just be a better person. Maybe not when I was 2, but since I was in high school and college, that's always appealed to me. Like, how do I improve who I am in my circumstances? And I've got a PhD in psychology because I wanted to understand, I wanted to master that. And what's interesting to me is I went through all of this training, and even in getting a PhD in psychology, we had to go through our own counseling and therapy.
Yep.
We didn't have to, but it was strongly encouraged for us to do that. And so I did that. And I came out of that experience still feeling, I don't feel that much different. My circumstances aren't that much different. And it wasn't until I discovered coaching and the powerful awareness of shifting and not just looking at past, but really looking at what are the outcomes that I want in the future and how do I change my thinking to achieve that. So what you're describing is powerful because my well-being has gone up considerably over the years. It wasn't an immediate. I think that's what's really important to grasp. It's not going to be an immediate shift. It's the compound effect over time
Yes.
of what happens when we gain more and more mastery over our thinking.
That's right. So one of the things that I like to share with people is when you look at your life today, it's a result of your thinking from yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. And so if you don't like what you see right now, let's examine how your thinking brought you here. But even more than that, let's examine what kind of thinking is required to get you to somewhere new. Now, this kind of piece that we're about to talk about, I think, is even more important than leveraging your thinking to get the results you want, which is the results that we want are usually something tangible, right? Like I want a promotion, or I want to live in a better house, or I want to live in a better city, or I want a nicer home, or whatever those things are, tangible things. But when we're really using this well and at the highest level, we start to learn to leverage our thinking not to get specific circumstances or outcomes that are tangible, but we leverage them to get certain feelings, emotional states that supersede or go above this whole idea of specific outcomes. So I just want to feel good. I want to feel healthy. I want to feel optimistic. I want to live in a state of presence, but also in this state of constantly being aware of what I'm fortunate for. So being in a state of appreciation. When we leverage our thinking to drive our emotional state, all the physical stuff follows, right? So that's the ultimate in leveraging our thinking.
So our thinking drives our feeling, drives our physical state, drives the results that we get. How did you become interested in this? What's driving your passion for this, Kim?
So I run a coaching company called Frame of Mind Coaching. I've been doing this for 15 years, but before I did it, I had my own life experience, right? Like, sometimes life just knocks you down. The question is, what do you do when you're knocked down? Do you stay down? Or do you say, okay, so like, why is this happening? And what is this about? And what can it mean for me? And that's where I really was. I was in a terribly dark place. And I knew that that's not where I wanted to stay. So I started to do a whole bunch of research, a whole bunch of reading, a whole bunch of journaling. I just started to do a whole bunch of work with the intention of just simply feeling lighter, less, the word isn't anxious, but less heavy.
Yeah.
Right? And when I started to do that so many years ago, I started to realize, so much of personal development takes us down the wrong track, takes us down the wrong road.
So true.
Right? And so if we could kind of scale back and say, like, let's get to the foundation, let's get to the root cause, which is our thinking leads us to places and we end up getting there without our conscious awareness. If we could simply become conscious of how this works, how our thinking leads us to places and situations and circumstances that really aren't where we want to go, now we have an increased level of control about where we do want to go and how to get there. But I don't know, you and I, we're not that different. But how many times did we engage in professional relationships, personal relationships, thinking they would be awesome, and then they weren't, right? And so why did that happen? Where did that come from?
And you're tracing it back to thinking.
Yes, of course.
And it comes right back to us. So the responsibility lands squarely on our individual shoulders
Right.
for what we're creating in life and being mindful of our thoughts. I'm thinking about a conversation that I had earlier this week with a business owner, and we were talking about a behavior change that was difficult, that was creating uncomfortable feelings, and it was around money. And my question was, walk me through what you're saying to yourself about this. And paused for a moment, and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, what runs through your head as you're making this decision? And it was at that point where it was the thinking of everyone else needs to be taken care of. I come last. And that's one thought. But if it's a repetitive thought and we organize our lives around it, and especially the money in the business, that played out over time, over years, that pattern produces a very detrimental result that nobody would want. And so I love how you're just making it so simple and you're bringing it to, let's look at the thought. So what would you do with that when you hear someone in your coaching, when you hear a leader saying everyone else needs to come first? Where do you go with that?
Well, I'll come to that. But, how did this piece of the conversation started with, we're thinking about a behavioral change and you're pretty skilled. So you took this person back to, let's forget about the behavior for a moment. Let's look at the thinking. So I want to address that because I feel like a lot of people jump ahead. They jump to the behavior. Like I work with leaders and I look at how they lead their people and they are looking for specific behaviors. I go to HR conferences and I see the top HR leaders of massive multi-billion-dollar companies talk about what behaviors are you looking for? And I sit there and I think to myself, you're missing the key ingredient. The key ingredient is that before behaviors happen, thoughts take place. And if we don't address the thoughts, don't line up the thoughts, then we're going to try to change behaviors and we might succeed temporarily. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's really, really critical that we address the thinking. So in the case that you brought to the table, you have a person who chronically feels to take care of others before them. And this has been the pattern, not only that he believes, but that he has acted on probably. So the question is, what's in it for him? We wrap our arms around beliefs. There's a reason for that. They serve us somehow unconsciously. So when he believes that he has to take care of other people first, what's in it for him really? Does that make him a hero? Does that make him needed, valuable, wanted? What does it do for him? Because when we hold on to an idea for dear life, there's a reason we do that. And the only way to peel people off, right, like they're holding on so tightly, the only way to help them let go is to understand what they're really holding on to and why that is and what would happen if they let go.
I love that question. So what is that doing for you and what's in it for you to hold on to that belief? Because it makes me think about so much of our beliefs and the way we organize the world come from our past and especially childhood. And the things that we believe and do that are maybe not serving us now served us at a certain point in our lives.
That's right.
At a critical point in our lives. And so we develop this belief that this is the way we're going to manage life. And so just this conversation of surfacing the thought and then going to the next level and saying, what is this serving for you? I can imagine there's maybe things that it does in the present, but maybe that conversation would also lead someone to realize, you know what? Not serving me at all.
That's right. Or I have a false belief that it serves me in this way.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of the times we have false beliefs. We have beliefs about things that really contradict our key desires. Mm-hmm. So for example, if I have a key desire that my child or my son or daughter become independent, then that clashes with me telling them what to do all the time, right? It just clashes. Mm-hmm. So often we find that our behaviors directly contradict our deepest desires, and yet we continue to do that. So why do we keep telling our kids what to do when what we really want is for them to be independent? It's because we have a fear that they won't be able to figure it out. or we have a fear that their actions will be a poor reflection on us, or we have a fear that they will get in trouble and get hurt and that would devastate us, or whatever it is, right? So we often take actions that take us away from what we really want.
And so much of this happens on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not examining our thinking as we go through the day typically. We're just doing our lives and we're reacting and doing one thing after another and acting out of habit. And so we're talking about here is just catching something that's not serving and taking a few questions to step back from it. So really, you and I coach people and we do this with people over the phone or in person. This is something that can be done on your own too. It's a practice. You can't do it as skillfully and it's hard. And I don't want to give the impression you can just ask a few questions and boom, everything's fixed. But it is a process that you can start taking on your own and start just looking at, I'm not getting the result I want. What is the thought that's driving that? And are these thoughts serving me? That's a place to start to unpack this. And at the same time, there's tremendous power in having someone outside you who pushes the pause button and says, wait a minute, I hear something there. Let's step back. Let's unwind this a little bit. Let's see what's underneath it. What is your experience when you're coaching leaders? What are some of those critical moments where you hear the thinking? Because I know you are very adept at catching, there may not be a healthy thought under there. So what are some of the signals that you pick up on?
Well, for me, the key signal is their emotion, right? So if they're frustrated, if they're annoyed, if they're impatient, if they're down, if they're hard on themselves, if they're hard on other people, if they are tired all the time, those are indicators that something's not going the way they want it to go. So their emotional state tells me their thinking isn't leading them to where they want to be going. So that's easy. And that's for everybody who's listening. Pay attention to your emotional state. When you're feeling off, that's an indicator that your thinking isn't taking you where you want it to go, where you want to be. And so that's the easiest way to figure that out. Having said that, I do every single day. I ask my clients to journal in an online journal. You know that. And when they journal, they're journaling their words, the words they write, the stories they tell, their examples. Everything that's in their journal provides me data that helps me understand their patterns of thought, their beliefs, their perspectives, their values. And that helps me understand whether or not they are taking themselves in the direction of their dreams and desires. So it's easy to find. Even simple words that they use will tell me whether or not their thinking is serving them or hurting them.
I know some of our profit designers who are listening to this, they are coaching their team members. And so I imagine as they're listening to this, they're thinking, oh my goodness, I can use this as I coach my team members because they're learning how to ask these coaching questions. And so much of the time when we're working with team members, it's around results that we want from them and that they want to achieve and how to help them be more effective. So just catching that emotion when it's off, but combining it with writing and the journaling and that piece, that I think that's a really unique part that you bring into this and it's really what happens when we slow down long enough to put words to paper, because our thoughts go so fast through our head. And even the most self-aware of us don't catch everything. But when we slow down, and then when we have someone outside of us who's looking at what we're writing and the stories and the experiences that are being shared, that's where like you said, the data is for shifting, for digging in and looking at where the shifts need to happen.
Right. So, I've been doing this for a lot of years, as have you. And as I talk to you and I say to you, here's a good idea for people to do, all of a sudden what happens is I'm like, oh man, I haven't done that in a long time. I should do that. I'm going to do that as soon as I hang up, right? So even those of us who are pretty adept and skilled and committed and driven in this field still need help sometimes, right? Because we do get stuck in our habits and we're busy. And so sometimes we do need that outside voice, that outside perspective that just takes a quick peek and says, hey, have you thought of this? Or, hey, What's up with that? Or what are you thinking here? How will it lead you to where you want to go? And so an outside perspective accelerates your progress.
It absolutely does. And I find for myself that it's during times of stress where I will revert back to behaviors, thoughts that don't serve me.
Yep.
And it's having those people outside of us who will say, hey, what's going on here? Let's check into this. Let's see, is there anything different? It reminds me, yesterday I was on a mastermind call with my peers for my own self. And I threw out something that I was having an emotional reaction to. And one of my colleagues said to me, does it have to be emotional? And I thought, isn't that an interesting question? Just right there to sit with that and take that in, because prior to being asked that, just reacting. It's the value of someone outside, because when we learn these coaching skills and we learn to be curious, we have that ability to impact those around us and ask these questions that cause us to go deeper.
Right. But so let's take that as an example. If you did not trust that person, receiving that question might be a hard question to receive.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so, you said that there are a whole bunch of people who are managing their teams or coaching their teams. So one of the critical components of coaching is that relationship that you've built with the people underneath you, and making sure that they know you are 100% on their side, on their team, and wanting almost as much as them their own success. Right? So if you receive that kind of question from someone who unequivocally is on your side, you embrace that question.
Right.
However, if you receive that question from somebody who says, does it have to be emotional? Your reaction could be, well, they're my emotions. And you start to become defensive, right?
Yes.
And so this relationship that's built between leaders and the people that they are leading is really, really critical. And so for me, one of my greatest passions is how leaders lead. And do they have the coaching skills they need to really move someone to a new level? And do they have the ability to build a relationship that truly demonstrates trust and builds loyalty, not just in one direction, but two directions?
So let's unpack that a little bit, because trust is the foundation. And
right.
What is so interesting to me is the research that's out there that, leaders have a much greater perspective on the trust, or a perception that trust is much higher in organizations typically than team members do. So we leaders tend to overestimate the level of trust that exists within our teams. What do you think might be going on there?
Well, I think that a lot of leaders believe that they are needed. In other words, this person needs a job or this person needs a place, so they have no choice. They have to kind of trust me. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the data on this. I'm curious to know what you have found.
Well, so what I see typically going on, to be fair to these leaders, is that your heart's in the right place. Like, you have every intention to make it a trusting environment and a comfortable environment for team members. But in the reality of, especially a small business, everything is happening so quickly. And it is running from one thing to the next. And just in the simple day-to-day interactions that we can have, a lot of things break trust that we don't intend to break trust. And an example is, being in a meeting and saying, okay, I'm going to get you this information. And then you leave the meeting and forget. That's a break in trust. Or saying to one team member, yes, I hear you on this. We need to make a change on that. And then not doing anything because you get busy and it's just changed. The priority level has changed, but not getting back to the person and saying, here's what's happened. So I think a lot of that is inadvertently breaking trust. And when trust is broken, it becomes a feeding ground for thinking that doesn't serve us, for thoughts that on the team and the leader, for thoughts that take the team in a direction and get results that the team doesn't want to have.
That's a great point. And also what ends up happening is the subject of accountability comes up. And so what you're really saying is that in order for me to build a great relationship with my team, I need to hold myself accountable as a leader. So if I make a promise, I need to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
If I say I will do something, I need to follow through. just as I expect my team members to do the same thing. I need to demonstrate accountability. I don't need to hold people accountable. I don't need to be over their shoulders. I don't need to make sure they tick off all the boxes and get all their tasks done. What I need to do is show up in an accountable manner and expect the same from them. That's a different game. And it's very interesting. I think you're 100% right. As leaders, we get super busy and we forget. And we have priorities. And some of the things that we perceive to be not so important slide down on the list of things we get done.
Yeah. So in your experience working with leaders, as you start to help them be more aware of their thinking, the behaviors, and then the results and how that lines up, what is, for someone who is new to this, who like this is new information, never thought about how my thoughts are impacting my results, what would be some initial steps that you would recommend they take to just start working on this and be more aware of it?
For themselves, you mean?
Yeah, for themselves.
Okay. So as a leader, again, I'm a big fan of journaling. So one of the very, very simple journaling exercise that I give to a lot of my clients is, what do I really, really want? And make that list. And then the second question is, so what's stopping me from having that? And the what's stopping me underneath that is all your beliefs, all your thinking, all the faulty ways that you look at things that are getting in your way. And it could be as simple as, what I really want is I really want to start a business. I want to be independent. I don't want to work in a corporate setting anymore. I want to do my own thing. I want to be a business owner. And what's stopping me? Well, I need money and I don't have money. I don't have investment money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the people. I don't have the team. And while those all seem tangible, right? Oh, those are reasonable things. Underneath those are beliefs that say, well, there's no money available to me. There's no one who will help me. And I don't deserve to be helped, right? So what we want to do is we want to peel back the layers of those beliefs to really get underneath what's truly stopping you. So when you do that exercise and you start listing all the reasons why you're not where you want to be, keep going. Ask yourself, is that really true?
Ooh.
And then keep going beyond that. Is that really true? Is it really true that there's no money available to me? Just as an example. So we often give reasons why we are where we are. And those reasons are veiled or hidden. Underneath that are hidden beliefs. And we want to get to those.
That is so powerful. And, even the first question that you threw out, what do I want? So in my experience, when I ask that of people, it's a conversation stopper because that's not something we typically think about in our society, in our culture as adults. We're not used to thinking about what we want. And so just taking the time to reflect on that is extremely powerful. So I want to encourage our listeners, what Kim is sharing here, to take some time and journal and just reflect on, what do I want, as a powerful question, even before getting to what's stopping me. But definitely take it to that level to look at this. And I love how you're sharing is this true? And continuing to ask, is this really true? And challenging these beliefs that we hold. I remember for myself, when I first encountered coaching and I encountered the what do I want question, I really tie that back to, that was the moment in my life where everything changed. That is the pivot point in my life. And I was in my 30s. I was in a job that was sucking the life out of me. And I asked myself this question of, what do I want? And I remember taking my journal outside to write about this and thinking to myself, I don't think this is going to work. I think this is just me putting my faith in, I really hope this works, like double cross the finger.
Right.
But there was another part of me, the healthier part of me, that said, try it, because if it works, it could be incredible. And that's what I want to leave our listeners with today is, even if you're skeptical, if it works, it will be incredible for you.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
It's a healthy thought. So Kim, how could our listeners get in touch with you?
So the best way to find us anywhere is to look us up online. We're everywhere, but it's frameofmindcoaching.com. And on there are YouTube videos, articles, like all kinds of resources. And there's an invitation for a complimentary coaching call. Now, it's not your ordinary coaching call. Why? Because we ask you to journal first. And we use that journal as the basis of having this conversation. And very often we find that in your writing, are secrets that you don't even know exist. And we're able to show them to you. We're able to demonstrate how your thinking is impacting you. And that call alone has historically been known to really wake you up and help you see things you've never seen before. So I invite everybody to come and try that out.
I love that you're extending that, because it's very generous of you to do that, to take the time to read journal entries even before you get on a complimentary coaching call. That's tremendous. And I also want to let our listeners know you have a podcast as well. And what is the name of your podcast?
It's called the Frame of Mind Coaching Podcast. Now, I had you on my show not that long ago, and I was in Edinburgh last week with my daughter. And we had a conversation about interview questions. And I said to her, I have a new set of interview questions from Dr. Sabrina that I want to share with you. And I just started to ask her, who was your favorite teacher in high school? And she started to describe her teacher and why she was her favorite. And then I said, and which one was the one that you didn't like the most? And she described it. And I thought, man, those questions really work. They really work.
Yes. So for those of you who may not be as familiar, what Kim is referencing is she's talking about pattern interviewing, which I share in the How to Hire the Best in the latest edition, the contractor edition. And Kim and I talked about this on the podcast, and it really kind of ties into what we're talking about here. As someone, if you're interviewing a job applicant and you are asking them about their favorite high school teacher and their least favorite high school teacher, they're revealing their thinking in those questions and their patterns of relating. And so that's an authority figure in your daughter's life. And so you're getting an insight into how she's going to relate to authority figures, which if you're doing a job interview and you have a candidate in front of you, I think we want to know how that candidate's going to relate to the authority figures, because we're going to be the next authority figure in their life.
Right. And I think it gives us a lot more information than that. Like just asking my daughter those two questions, it helped me see like, what are her values? What's important to her? How does she function well in certain environments? What's going to cause her to thrive? What's going to cause her to shut down? And on and on and on. I mean, amazing. Great question. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Kim. I appreciate having you here on the podcast. And I think you have given our profit designers a lot to think about in 2020.
I hope so.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Is your business on track to being a highly profitable, great place to work? Take our assessment at tapthepotential.com/assessment and find out now. Thank you for spending time with us today. Join our conversation in the Profit by Design podcast Facebook group. Share your thoughts on today's episode, ask us questions, and let us know what you want to hear about next. Visit our website at profitbydesignpodcast.com to access resources from our sponsors and tools we've created for you. Subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening to right now. There's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and hit it so that you always get a notification when we release a new episode. And finally, share our podcast with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.